This is a French question. We hope that any delegation would come here is to see the truth about what's happening in Syria during the last years since the beginning of the war, 6 years ago. The problem now regarding France in particular, that they don't have embassy, they don't have any relation with Syria at all. So it's like we can say it's a blind state. How can you forge a policy towards certain region if you can't see, if you're blind? You need to see the importance of those delegations, that they represent the eyes of the states, but that depends on the state. Do they want to see, or they want to keep adopting the ostrich policy and they don't want to tell the truth? Because now everything in the world is changing regarding Syria on every level, the local, the regional, and the international. But till this moment, the French administration hasn't changed its position. They still speak the old language, which is disconnected from our reality. That's why we have a hope that there's someone in the state who wants to listen to these delegations, to the facts. I'm not talking about my opinion, I'm talking about the reality in Syria. So we have hope. Of course, it's very painful for us as Syrians to see any part of our country destroyed, or to see any bloodshedding anywhere. This is self-evident, this is emotional part. But for me as a president or as an official, the question for the Syrian people, what is going to do, what I'm going to do. It's not about the feeling is seven, as I said. How we're going to rebuild our cities. It depends on what kind of war you're looking for. Are you looking for a quiet war, war without destruction? I haven't heard in the history of a good war. Every war is bad. Why bad? Because every war is about destruction. Every war is about the killing. That's why every war is bad. You cannot say this is good war, even if it's for good reason, to defend your country for noble reason. But it's bad. That's why it's not the solution, if you have any other solution. But the question, how can you liberate the civilians in those areas from the terrorists? Is it better to leave them under their supervision, under their oppression, under their fate defined by those terrorists, by beheading, by killing, by everything, but not having state? Is that the role of the state, just to keep and watch? You have to liberate, and this is the price sometimes. But at the end, the people are liberated from the terrorists. That's the question now. Are they liberated or not? If yes, that's what we have to do. First of all, ceasefire is about different parties. So when you say there's still fire, there's a viable ceasefire, is when every party stops fighting and shooting. And it's not the case in many areas in Syria. And that was reported by the Russian Center of not supervision, of observation regarding the ceasefire. There's breaching of that ceasefire on a daily basis in Syria, including Damascus. But in Damascus, mainly because the terrorists occupied the main source of water of Damascus, where more than 5 million civilians is deprived from water for the last 3 weeks now. And the role of the Syrian army is to liberate that area in order to prevent those terrorists from using that water in order to suffocate the capital. The second part of that ceasefire is not about al-Nusra and ISIS. And the area that we've been fighting to liberate recently, regarding the water sources of the capital, Damascus, is occupied by al-Nusra. And al-Nusra announced formally that they are occupying that area. So it's not part of the ceasefire. Regarding al-Raqqa, of course, it's our mission regarding according to the constitution and according to the laws, that we have to liberate every inch of the Syrian land. This is, there's no question about that. It's not to be discussed. But it's about when, what's our priorities. And this is military, regarding to the military planning, about the military priorities. But nationally, there's no priority. Every inch is a Syrian inch. It should be within the purview of the government. Of course, we are ready, and we announced that our delegation to that conference is ready to go when they define, when they set the time of that conference. We are ready to negotiate everything. When you talk about negotiation regarding whether to end the conflict in Syria or talking about the future of Syria, anything, it's fully open. There's no limit for that negotiations. Who's going to be there from the other side, we don't know yet. Is it going to be real Syrian opposition? When I say real, it means has a grassroots in Syria, not the Saudi one or French one or British one. It should be a Syrian opposition to discuss the Syrian issues. So the viability, or let's say the success of that conference will depend on that point. But my position related to the Constitution, and the Constitution is very clear about the mechanism in which you can bring president or get rid of president. So if they want to change, to discuss this point, they have to discuss the Constitution. And the Constitution is not owned by the government or the president or by the opposition. It should be owned by the Syrian people. So you need a referendum for every constitution. This is one of the points that could be discussed in that meeting, of course. But they cannot say we need that president or we don't need that president, because president related to the ballot box. If they don't need him, let's go to the ballot box. The Syrian people should bring president, not part of the Syrian people. What we've been implementing during the last 3 years, because we wanted genuinely to have peace in Syria, the government offered amnesty for every militant who gave up his armaments. And it worked, and they still have the same option if they want to go back to their normality and to go back to their normal life. This is the maximum that you can offer, amnesty. No, because we don't have any contacts with any one of them. And we cannot count very much on the statements and rhetoric during the campaign. So we always say, let's wait and see what they're going to implement, what policy they're going to adopt after they are in their position. But we always have hopes that the next administration or government or president, they want to deal with the reality, to disconnect themselves from the disconnected policy from our reality. That's our hope. And they can work for the interest of the French people. Because the question now, after 6 years, as a French citizen, do you feel safer? I don't think the answer is yes. The immigration problem, has it made the situation in your country better? I think the question is no, whether in France or in Europe. The question now, what the reason? This is the discussion that the next administration or government or president should deal with in order to deal with our reality, not with their imaginations as has been happening during the last 6 years. The priority to fight the terrorists and not meddling in the affairs of other countries are welcome. But we have to be cautious, because what we've learned in this region during the last few years, that many officials would say something and do the opposite. I wouldn't say that Mr. Fillon would do this, I hope not. But we have to wait and see, because there's no contact. But so far, what he said, if it's implemented, that will be very good. I think if I want to send it to the politicians, I would say the self-evident thing that you have to work for the interest of the Syrian citizen. And for the last 6 years, the situation is going in the other direction, because the French politics harmed the French interests. So for the French people, I would say the mainstream media has failed in most of the West. The narrative has been debunked because of the reality. And you have the alternative media, you have to look for the truth. The truth was the most important, the main victim of the events in the Middle East. including Syria. I would ask any citizen in France to search for the reality, for the real information through the alternative media. When they search for this information, they can be more effective in, let's say, dealing with their government, or at least not allowing some politicians to base their politics on lies. Yeah, if I want to talk realistically, because the Syrian problem is not isolated. It's not only Syrian. Actually, the biggest part of the, or let's say the major part of the Syrian conflict is regional and international. The simplest part that you can deal with is the Syrian part. The regional and the international depends mainly on the relation between the United States and Russia. What he announced yesterday was very promising. If there's a genuine approach or initiative toward improving the relation between the United States and Russia, that will affect every problem in the world, including Syria. So I would say, yes, we think that's positive regarding the Syrian conflict.